Hi, I'm Tender Loving Cares,
And I'm Pizzawolf.
and you're listening to the second season and second episode of the second season of Hungry for More, the podcasts about fetishism by fetists.
And for fetists.
I'm hungry. I'm so hungry. Yeah, I'm hungry. I'm so hungry. Yeah, I'm hungry. I'm so hungry. Yeah.
So last week, we listened to TLC's interesting, eye-opening, and a little bit scary nerding out on the limits of algorithms which govern the possibilities of algorithms which deliver fetus content to you through YouTube, and it had the side effect of making me feel like I was 100 years old. So this week it's my turn, and I have the control of the topic this week, and so I went with something that was sufficiently far in the past, although it has kind of modern repercussions today, where neither of us would feel old. And what I thought was a really kind of interesting topic that doesn't get its fair shake of discourse in fetishism today is the grand tradition of circus fat people, which is kind of a weird thing. But there's been some recent kind of reinvigoration of this trope of a person who is like so fat that you want to pay attention to them. The latest season of the anthology series, American Horror Story, was, or actually I think it was 2 seasons ago.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry. I literally thought you were going to mention MTV now, because I was immediately jumping to the modern version of, hey, let's look at fat people.
No, that's coming. This is we'll
Okay.
go all the way around.
Yeah.
But no, the anthology series of American Horror Story featured a circus fat lady by the name of, the character's name, I think was Ima Wiggles, was played by Chrissy Metz, fat actress, and and
Still fat
that
though.
Yeah. But that kind of got me thinking, because it had faded from my memory. But if you know anything about me outside of the site, you know that even though I live in California now, I'm from Florida, which is a state that has a rich tradition of circus sideshow performers. And for several years, I lived in Sarasota, Florida, which was where the Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus, kept
Lobster
their
Boy.
winter. Lobster Boy, yeah.
Lobster Boy. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm being into criminal psychology. That also tickles the whole criminology aspect of it. And that's why I Lobster Boy.
Didn't like a hitman was hired or something? I don't know.
Yeah, the family set something up, 100% sure, and I can't even blame them.
Different podcast episode,
Sorry.
I guess. But either way, a lot of the sideshow performers ended up retiring to their winter quarters. The circus wouldn't tour during the winter. It was too cold. People wouldn't come out. So they would live in Florida, and they'd live along the west coast of Florida from a town near Tampa Bay called Gibsonton down to Sarasota. And Sarasota is where John Ringling and Mabel Ringling, his wife, retired. And a lot of Ringling performers were there, too. There were retirement homes and benevolent halls that were built just to house circus performers. To the point where at the local Catholic church, there's a stuffed lion and a stained glass window with a circus wagon. And I mean, this is built into the fabric of the community.
Yeah.
And so one of the traditions of the circus at the time, of course, you had the show inside the tent, which was, acrobats and wild animals and things of that nature. You also had the sideshow, which went on, understandably, on the side. It happened outside the tent in kind of its own little thing. And the most popular sideshow was called a 10-in-1, where you'd pay a single admission price and you'd kind of walk around seeing a bunch of individual attractions. And, one of those categories of individual attraction was the freak show. And the freak show doesn't really exist today. A lot of the conditions for the freak show are probably criminal. People were obtained for the freak show via contracts, which would, be tantamount to slavery. So it's probably a no-go. But there were born freaks who would be little people who had gigantism or acromegaly, other sorts of diseases which had physical manifestation. Then there would be made freaks as well, which would be tattooed people, very, very fat people, and they called them human skeletons, people who were very, very thin. They usually the result of having progressive wasting diseases. Most of the very, very thin people were in the sideshow lore married to the very, very fat people. And this seems like a super, when I was kind of getting into this seemed like a really, really I'm gonna uncover some human misery here. There's going to be some and Lord knows there's a bunch of it.
Definitely,
but two of the most famous fat people in the history of the sideshow are Dolly Dimples, Celesta Geyer, and then baby Ruth Pontico, both of whom I wanna spend a moment talking about. I don't know if you saw any of them. They were usually given kind of fantastic names. They performed under different names. There were a ton of babies, when Baby Ann, Baby Betty, Baby Bunny. Then we had the Fat Farmer family, Happy Jack Eckert. Just sort of these names that you can almost hear the fatness in them.
A stage
name. Yeah. So Happy and Jolly and and Big Jim this and that was just kind of always the way that they did that. They also had place names were common. So there was Alice from Dallas and Wisconsin Winnie and the golden age of fat people in circus sideshows was probably from about 1850 to about 1950. And you could look at several reasons as to why this was the case. Prior to 1850, it was just uncommon to, there weren't as many traveling circuses, and it was uncommon to find people who were that fat regularly. The numbers changed over the years, but as industrialization kicked up, calories became cheaper, agriculture industrialized, people routinely started getting fatter. And then by the 1950s, the 350-pound man who in 1880 would bring in vast crowds to marvel at, wasn't doing it. You're talking about having, by the 1950s, most performers were solidly 600 plus pounds.
And it's not also just about the size, but there was also a huge shift in how fat people were perceived in general, meaning as before it would be like, wow, and so some kind of, it was mesmerizing to see someone that big, because it was kind of like a feat of what the human body is possible, whether it's weight or height or stuff like that. And with all the health craze that started exactly during those times, talking like from the 20 onwards and even a little bit earlier, it's probably been a huge difference at how people would perceive that.
Yeah, that's 100% true. In fact, a lot of the early marketing for, and you kind of see the shift go from this early form of marketing to the freaky side of things. But initially, so Ella Mills was a sideshow fat lady, and she was billed at 586 pounds of feminine charm. You had this was Dolly Dimples, the personality girl. That's so they had kind of these subheadings or these title, or this was the Tennessee Rose, or so they had there was dignity attached to it. It wasn't just come on and gawk at the freak show. And so, interestingly enough, while it was not uncommon for these people to face health problems, some of the most famous fat people lived a long and happy life devoid of fat-related health problems. They started families. In some cases, they were generational fat people. Baby Ruth Pontico specifically was regarded as possibly a third generation circus fat lady. We don't know for sure if her grandmother was or wasn't, but we have a lot about her. And I'm going to take a moment to discuss Baby Ruth, because she's just a really interesting character. She's born 1904 in Kempton, Indiana, according to, and now of course, we have a mix of 1904 official records, probably a little shaky, and then also the billing from what it was. She was born 16 pounds. They said she was 50 pounds by the time she was a year old and 300 pounds by the time she was 10. That's wildly outside the lines for what we anticipate as being normal. But again, she had a career
you see
as
that
a
even
circus.
today. But today you see it in like the medical shows and stuff like that.
Absolutely, and there's a 100% a through line of the curiosity around the hyper obese, that goes from the circus sideshow fat lady to shows like My 600-Pound Life or the True Life MTV True Life episode on fetism, where it's just, and I don't know if you've been to any. I've certainly been to Phoebe meetups. I'm getting to the point myself where I occasionally get a look from someone, and when a bunch of fat people get together, we catch looks. There's some sort of interesting, some fascinating quality that attracts the outside, and it's not always let's look at the freaks. So just kind of tracking the career of Baby Ruth. Initially, it was said that she contacted the circus herself as a result of hearing that a previous circus fat lady, Alice from Dallas, had died, sent pictures and got the job. There was another story that she was on the beach in Sarasota, Florida, and was approached by an interesting job title I'd never really considered before, circus recruiter. That's probably a real weird initial conversation with someone asking them if they want to participate in a sideshow. But the truth of it, according to her family, was she was actually in Hot Springs, Arkansas, because you got to remember the age of the circus fat person was also kind of directly correlated to, well, I mean, maybe not causally, but there was a direct correlation to the rise of kind of the fatty popular health movement in America, the beginnings of diet culture. So actually, Baby Ruth was in Hot Springs, Arkansas, taking the waters, drinking the spring water in Arkansas in order to lose weight, and was approached by someone telling her that the
circus recruiter.
Yeah, some sort of circus recruiter type character. So she initially, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but like the only image in my mind is how awesome those business cards must look like. I'm sorry.
I'm the circus. Yeah, I mean, just we've all tried to have that conversation once or twice in our lives, trying to explain fetism to people who aren't fetists. I mean, maybe the business cards would be helpful. Maybe that's not what we're doing. So. So Baby Ruth ended up accepting a job at the circus. She was initially billed under the name I'm a Waddler or Ema Waddler. I think it was I'm a Waddler. She expected humiliation, but she was immediately befriended. She described the atmosphere within the circus as being really, really accepting. They taught her how to handle the hecklers. You get, understandably, in doing this type of thing, you get pretty good at firing back at people who are giving you, grief for being fat. In addition to her considerable size and appetite, Baby Ruth had a really fast tongue, and she kind of picked up on the nuance of this mix of like revulsion and fascination, because some of the people who probably precursors to us, some of the people who came to the circus sideshow to look at her were not there to heckle her or to stare blankly, but she'd get love notes, and she'd get admiring stares and invitations to go out and things like that. And she had her own
Her own groupies.
Yeah, her own groupies, kind of her own admirers in every town. And she was once quoted as saying, "A lot of fellows seem to think that a fat girl is good for a lot more lovin'." And her, she said, "I don't know about that, but I do know we give them a lot. But I do know we give them a heck of a lot more to think about." And it was you're talking about the early 1900s here, and this is someone who's asserting fat sexuality when really kind of before mass culture and the twiggy body type post World War II.
And by the way, to anyone listening, if you're interested into the whole history aspect, we've done a whole episode on that.
It's a great one. Go back. Season 1. Yes, but this is pre that, and this is radical. This is a woman asserting her sexual prowess and her sexual her sexual agency in the early 1900s. And her stage name changed with her self-image. She was originally Imel Wadler, and she changed it to Lady Beautiful. That's what she ended up going by. And then she settled on Baby Ruth because the candy bar had recently been introduced, and her name actually was Ruth. She married Joe Pontico, who was he was the circus would come through Madison Square Garden in New York, and Joe was the balloon king of New York. He sold balloons, and he saw her from 100 feet away and said that this was the woman he was going to marry. So they, by all accounts, they had a loving marriage. When they during tourist season, they ran a Italian restaurant together. They had a daughter. So in terms of the life she had, this was not the story of some woman force-fed slop and kept fat against her will. She was doing the equivalent of, I guess, making lemonade in her day, and she was being paid well for it. She was making about $300 a day. She bought her husband the restaurant, and this is during the height of the Depression. As well. So she kind of just embraced her, and by this time she's now 700, 800 pounds. She's embraced this Baby Ruth persona. She's sitting around in a baby doll dress, shooting down hecklers. But she's got this fantastic life out of it. And it actually was it probably was one of the best lives that someone like her could have hoped for at that time. She ended up dying young, relatively young. But it was a result of having, complications from surgery to remove a tumor on her leg. It wasn't necessarily exclusively weight related. It could have been an issue that she was, her doctors unable to determine, having no real frame of reference for how to anesthetize someone, or they might have overdosed her. And I
mean, then again, what during what time did she die? We were still talking about medicine from the what?
We're talking, the early 1900s.
This was 1900s,
This was in 1941. So, she had waited. She had this tumor on her leg. She waited until the circus season was over, checked into a hospital in Tampa, Florida, to have it removed. And then they were able to take it off. They still surround this with, they built her a special reinforced operating table, and it took 15 orderlies to it, and whether or not that was true, surgery at that time was still kind of fraught with danger. But here's this story, which to me was a breath of fresh air, and also, just kind of shockingly like positive. I was expecting Freak Show to be just, all the worst angels of our Lobster Boy, or some drug addicts or poverty or slavery and Lord knows there was more than enough of that. But here was a story that was radically different. And it also kind of served to reflect the sort of the fact that social attitudes about fact are not monolithic.
Yeah.
There was a time where the farm boys would come to the sideshow to slip love notes to baby Ruth instead of, to point at the fat woman and say, there was absolutely no agency or no sexual identity there. Yeah. She was to be an object of derision, because that it flatly wasn't true. And, so if anyone out there is listening has now made it all the way through this podcast and thinks that fat people are not the, beautiful, sexual, fantastic creatures that we are, shameless plug as a fat man myself, there's a very good chance that your grandfather would have been, would have traded his thumb for a night on the town with baby Ruth Pontico. Life was different back then. And that kind of story to me gives me a little bit of hope for the future, because sometimes you look at diet culture and the veneration of the thin above anything else now, and you think, this will never get better.
Yeah.
But it's changed before, which if nothing else, it tells us it can change again.
Yeah. It's sad that it's all we remember, because that's just times we grew up in. But
a very short institution, it's societal memory about this stuff. And so what I'm kind of forced to conclude at the end of it was that the circus sideshow, the freak show, the thing that you think is going to be this reflection of society's institutionalized hatred of fat people, was actually just the opposite, because it was not a social institution, because it was this transitory, moving, changing entity. It created a space where people could carve it, where people could define themselves, and she could, and she made it for herself. She was able to be who she wanted to be, and when she was challenged by people who would kind of take her down a peg for being fat, she responded. She affirmed the fact that she came from this, this community of sideshow performers that supported each other. And at the end of the day, she was the one who was on the stage, who had the platform, and she shot them down without mercy. She destroyed those who would heckle her, and she lived the life that she wanted to live. So I was surprisingly pleased with the dive I did on circus fat people, and you see that come up a lot. I mean, there were some people who were obviously taken advantage of by the program, and it made me think. It made me think of how that works, how that translates today, because we do have analogs, modern analogs, which provide the public with an opportunity to kind of stare and laugh at fat people. But it's never direct in the face, where you could see something like Baby Ruth shooting back at those who would heckle her, because it's always through the visual medium. It
always feels a bit like nowadays it's amplified, and not just in the pros, because we also have more of those, considering how we can find each other, but also the kind of heckling directly translating into comments, into online posts, into social media stuff. Sure.
And we also don't have that space as much, outside of the kink, where fat people can kind of control their image as much. When mainstream media has chosen to look at fat people, when you see it on things like Biggest Loser or My 600-Pound Life or the MTV True Life that came out about fetism, we had heard from the participants in that documentary that they gave nuanced and complicated and positive descriptions of the kink, but the narrative was not controlled by the subject of the documentary. It was controlled by the producers. And I'm just remembering now, one of the subjects of that documentary was from Sarasota, Florida, in a weird twist of fate.
Oh my God.
There's the through line for you. But fat people have kind of been stripped by modern media of the ability to define themselves within the performing and public eye. We've heard it, kind of in a microcosm with with fat actors. Will Sasso from Mad TV famously, complained that he wasn't, people didn't like him as much, didn't think he was as funny when he lost weight. I still think he's a very funny comedian. Oh man, his name escapes me, but he played the fat lineman in Varsity Blues, and then later in Not Another Teen Movie. I believe his name's Ron Lester. He said the same thing. He lost, he ended up with a dramatic weight loss, and he went from I was the funny fat guy from these two successful teen movies to I'm just another actor in Hollywood, and there's a bunch of people who look like me. Yeah. So that ability for fat people to like have this space where they can both be fat and do other things has now kind of become this one note thing that the media will use to, they can be fat, but they're going to be as fat, and it's going to be what they, and being fat is going to be in furtherance of a narrative that they don't control. Yeah. So that was kind of a depressing coda to it. But the golden age of circus fat people was not as grim or as dark as it seems like it might be on the outside. There was a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah. I will forever be torn on that, even just hearing the names and how it's been marketed, and because I always, like, my image in my mind is the money making behind it, and there was so much money making behind it, but it's kind of a very nice human story behind that we tend to forget.
Yeah, it is. There is 100% a human story there, and I guess maybe just in an age where media was less pervasive than it is today, that humanity was kind of more tied in with it, and now it's sort of chopped piece by piece until they get what they want, and that's it. I
think we still do have our baby Ruths and our Dolly Dimples.
Yeah, except now they're just part of our community. We don't get them as much. I mean, we see some, but I mean, even
we have some awesome cam models and people out there. So we have.
Yeah. Sadly, we don't get to see it in as much much of the real life. Even Chrissy Metz, who played the circus fat woman in American Horror Story, she later claimed she felt pressured to lose weight for a role. Mm-hmm. She said she was happy to do it. She, I suppose, wanted to lose weight, but had a contract that was very explicit about it. Yep. We see stuff like that, and the space for someone to be both famous and fat, and famous for being fat, where it's not just they're incidentally fat and famous. They're part of their fame is related to their fatness, but it also isn't the whole measure of their fame. It seems like the opportunities for that in mainstream society anyway are limited and shrinking. But who knows?
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe one day Chris Pratt will be chubby again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There you go. Kirstie Alley, the who had her show Fat Actress, mm-hmm. and has like consistently gained and lost weight and advertised weight loss stuff. She actually, in a Jenny Craig ad, which is a weight loss company here in the States, said, like, I'm not like circus fat. I just want to lose 20 pounds. So just the idea that circus fat is still the shorthand for, some sort of monstrosity. It's just kind of like.
I think a lot of people wish they lived like Baby Ruth.
Yeah. Maybe they don't want to look like Baby Ruth, but if you took Baby Ruth's, fatness out of the equation, being someone who was in charge of their career, well compensated for the work they did, a business owner, mm-hmm. Who had a successful marriage and a child, and and lived, I'd sign up for that immediately. I'd also probably sign up for the 800 pounds, but that's neither here nor there.
Tell me more. No.
You can say that for a different podcast.
Yeah.
So this was the second episode of the second season of for more. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you will take the time to let us know how, what you thought about it, and if you want to hear more about this stuff, less about this stuff, more in-depth stuff, more broad stuff, whatever it is, we're grateful for the feedback. If you want to reach out to me directly, you're more than welcome to do so. I can be found on Phoebe as Pizzawolf. I'm Pizzawolf here and there. That's the easiest place to find me, and TLC has a bunch more stuff. So where can they find you?
Yeah, well, they can find me as Tender Loving Cares on Tumblr, on Phoebe as well, on Grammar. I have a Horngry profile that you can reach me with and message me feedback on the magazine or on the podcast. If you want to go directly to the website where we have embedded the first season of Hungry for More, as well as the first episode of this season, it's hungrymagazine.com.
Until next time, we'll see you, and thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm so hungry, yeah. I'm hungry. I'm so hungry.